Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to VC Friday, where today I get to talk about some generous VCLT that I received from the estimable Mr. Scott Guerin, a man of great erudition and distinguished lineage, who sent me a fat package containing 3 LPs and a fat CD boxed set. And I'll start off with that CD box. It's an album of German piano music in a modern classical minimalist style on the Celestial Harmonies label. And there are 3 composers represented here. Peter Michael Hamel, I've spoken about before on the channel. He's known for his work with the group Between, and I've shown his, at least one of his electronic music albums. And also music by 2 composers I was not previously familiar with, Hans Otter and Wilfried Hiller. There are 3 sets in here, as you might deduce. Peter Michael Hamel has the album Vom Klang des Lebens, or Of the Sound of Life, compositions written between 1992 and 2006 that are mostly titled in memoriam to various other composers. The pieces are nicely fleshed out, and this is in a more classical style, a little bit on the rhapsodic, rambling thing that you might associate with a Keith Jarrett, perhaps, but not jazzy. The others are more minimalist. Hans Otter and his Book of Hours. This is a piece consisting of 48 short compositions for piano. And the Hamel CD is not played by Hamel. It's played by Roger Woodward, who is also the pianist on the compositions of Hans Otter. And his Stundenbuch, or Book of Hours, which is 48 short pieces that are very sparse, and kind of wish that he'd taken them farther, because there's very interesting stuff happening in them. They're great ideas, but they're just sort of stated and left there. And you kind of wish he'd developed the pieces, because they have that potential. But these are in that minimalist mindset, so they're just presented as little jewels. The longest of them is about 2 minutes long. And obviously with 48 on one CD, most of them are quite short indeed. There's a bit more variation on this 2 CD set, the music of Wilfried Hiller. Similar title, this is the Book of Stars, Buch der Sterne. And this contains 88 short pieces, some of which have more than one part. So there are over 100 tracks between the 2 CDs. Some of them are only a few seconds long, less than half a minute. Others are fairly lengthy, around 6, 7, 8 minutes. So there's a wide variety. There's still a lot of the feeling that you kind of wish he'd taken the really short pieces farther, because they're good ideas. But he just presents them, and they are what they are. Other pieces, he does go into some development, and there is also a wider variation in the density, the texture of the music. The Hans Otter music is very sparse. It's like you hear one note at a time, single note lines most of the time, not a lot of chords happening. The material here is sometimes like that, and sometimes quite active, so there's a lot happening, more variation. The pianist here is Silke Avenhaus. So great stuff on the Celestial Harmonies label. This box was released in 2007, which was, in fact, the year that Hans Otto passed away. He actually died on Christmas Day of that year. The other two composers are still with us. Next, moving on to the vinyl, I think this album is the main reason Scott wanted to send the package. And this is an album titled Mono no Aware, credited to Linus plus Oakland / Van Hertum / Zach. And I love this cover. Beautiful gatefold presentation. And Linus is the duo of Ruben Machtelinks on guitar, baritone guitar, and banjo, and Thomas Gillings on saxophones and alto clarinet, and they're joined by Nils Oakland on hardanger fiddle, the traditional Scandinavian fiddle, and Niels van Hertum on euphonium and trumpet, and Ingar Zach on percussion. And I was kind of expecting something in the very free improvisation field, something along the lines of Han Benink, Derek Bailey, or indeed the Henry Kaiser album I showed recently. This is not that. This is a lot more approachable music. There is a considerable improvisation going on, group improvisation, but it's pretty low-key, light and enjoyable. It's not the kind of forbidding clank and squeak stuff that I sometimes present on this channel. So I found this really enjoyable. Comes with both a regular inner sleeve and a printed inner sleeve, and I thought it kind of interesting that the title was familiar because it's not the only Mono no Aware album I have. I have this album on the Cuneiform label by Nick Mack and Mono no Aware. The phrase is Japanese that literally translates as the pathos of things. It refers to a feeling of wistful sadness for the transience or impermanence of things. It's kind of Japanese for all things must pass. The next album in the package was very unusual. This is from 1965, and it's a privately released album by the UC Berkeley Free Speech Movement. And this is FSM's, or Free Speech Movement's, Sounds and Songs of the Demonstration. And if you know about the history of the Berkeley free speech protests in the 60s, you'll know the name Mario Savio, and that's him on the top, and he appears again there in the collage. This is an album of two sides, as many albums are. What we have on one side is all spoken word documentary speeches from the event. And side two is songs, mostly by people who think they are Bob Dylan. There's a lot of Bob Dylan imitating going on, and we get a nice little booklet included with lyrics to the songs. And so I live on the opposite side of the bay from Berkeley, but it's a place I spend a lot of time in, so that history just sort of, to this day, kind of hangs over the university all these years later. So it's really cool to have this documentation of it.
A little while ago, something happened to me while I was taking a walk through the old UC. In front of Spa Hall, I was told to grab a seat when somebody gave me an apple to eat. So I ate it. Figured I'd better stick around though and find out what it was all about.
And the last album in the package from Scott was this 1957 recording of Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition, conducted by Fritz Reiner with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And Pictures at an Exhibition was composed in 1874 as a piano suite, and each of the sections is based on a different artwork by the artist and architect Victor Hartmann. So it's a concept album. It's all about the art of Victor Hartmann. Got to get that in because there's this theme of concept albums that you might notice. The composition was then orchestrated in 1922 by Maurice Ravel, and that's the version that we have here, the version that's usually performed. There were other orchestrations, but Ravel's is the one. And this is also special to me because Pictures at an Exhibition was the first serious classical LP I ever bought. Specifically, it was the recording by Eugene Ormandy with the Philadelphia Orchestra. But this one is also very cool in its own right, a very different interpretation. And of course, I was prodded into enjoying that music in the first place by the Emerson, Lake and Palmer rendition, which is extremely incomplete. It only uses some of the movements, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that you prog rock guys who haven't listened to the original will recognize here. This is on the RCA Red Seal label with the so-called Shaded Dog from the 50s, and it is part of the Living Stereo series. I think that's so much better than the dead kind of stereo, don't you think? But that leads me into another LP. I'm going to head back to the bargain bin at Vinyl Solution because I found somebody had dumped another batch of Mahler recordings, and so I picked some up. Some of them turned out to be kind of not in good enough condition to keep, but that might even include this one. But here again, we have Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony, and this is Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde, and I'll pick up any recording of Das Lied von der Erde that I find. Again, a concept, because we've got this beautiful Chinese art here that that fits in with the Chinese poetry that provides the texts to the songs in Das Lied von der Erde, as sung by Richard Lewis, singing it alternates between male and female parts. Richard Lewis sings the first, third, and fifth songs, and Maureen Forrester sings the second, fourth, and sixth, the sixth being the hugely long Abschied song. There's a sheet here with the texts and translations. This is on the Victrola label, the budget division of RCA, and unfortunately this copy has a pretty strong warp to it. It doesn't sound bad, but the warp is so big when it kind of gets into the inner part of the grooves that it actually kind of touches and rubs against part of my cartridge. That's not good. Another Mahler album that I found together with that one was this album of Mahler's songs for just voice and piano, sung by Christa Ludwig. And this draws on 3 sets, the very early songs known as the Lieder und Gesang aus der Jugendzeit, or the songs from youth, these settings of songs by Rickert, and the settings from songs from the poetry collection Des Knaben Wunderhorn, and or the Boy's Magic Horn. Gotta, say that outright in order to give people an opportunity to make the usual double entendres about that. A couple of the Des Knaben Wunderhorn songs include Das irdische Leben, which is about a kid who begs for bread, and the mother says, no, later I've got to do this, I've got to knead the bread, I've got to go to the market, and the kid keeps begging for bread, and by the time the bread is finally ready, the kid dies of starvation. It's a real jolly song. There actually is some humor. There's another song on here. It's actually the last track, In Praise of High Intelligence, which is about a singing contest between a donkey and a nightingale. And the judge is a cuckoo. So the cuckoo thinks that the donkey's hee-haw sounds closer to his own song, so the donkey wins the contest. That's the joke. Johann Sebastian Bach was a busy guy. He not only found time to crank out over 1,000 pieces of music during his lifetime, he also fathered 20 children between his 2 wives. Well, not between his 2 wives, that would be strange, and Johann Sebastian was not a kinky sort of guy. But he did have 20 kids, and that's a sign of a guy who likes to get busy. So unfortunately, only half of them survived to adulthood, but out of those, there were 6 sons and 4 daughters. The daughters don't count because it was the 18th century. But 4 of the sons went on to become notable composers in their own right. A 5th was a professional musician but did not compose, and the 6th was apparently developmentally disabled, so we don't hear about him. But the one we do hear about the most of the 4 who were successful as composers is Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who went to the court of the Crown Prince of Prussia, who was an amateur flute player, if you could call the Crown Prince an amateur anything. And Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach wrote these sonatas while in the employ of the Crown Prince. And that Crown Prince went on to become the Emperor Frederick II, Frederick the Great. So it's good to have friends in high places, and C.P.E. Bach did that. This album is an early release on the Nonesuch label, and it contains 6 sonatas for flute and harpsichord, played by Jean-Pierre Rampal with his longtime accompanist Robert Véron-Lacroix on the harpsichord. It's an interesting combination of keys, because there are 6 pieces, and on each side we have 1 in B flat, 1 in D, and 1 in G. So it's like, these are good keys for piano sonatas. And they are in 3 movements each, which is pretty standard for sonatas. What is a little less conventional is that they're arranged with a slow movement followed by 2 fast movements, instead of the more usual fast, slow, fast arrangement. And a reminder that this week, or today, is Bandcamp Friday. So if you follow the link in the description to this video, you can go to my Bandcamp site and you can purchase that album with the turtle on the front. Or you can purchase the one with the dragonfly on the front, or you can get the one with the rats on the front, or you can get the one with all the little Cambrian explosion fauna on the front. So lots of goodies can be had on a Bandcamp Friday. Please do visit my Bandcamp site. And that's it for VC Friday. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again to Scott Guerin for the great VCLT. Everybody be well. I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.